Hello and welcome to Building a T-Shirt Empire. Today we have Ian Hinckley from DJI Apparel, and as always, Gavin is here to co-host. Ian, I'd love to hear from you about what it was that made DJI DJI, and what are you guys really offering the market?
DGI is just an acronym, so it's Daniel, Grant, and Ian. So Daniel and Grant were my two roommates in college. So Daniel was actually in the same room with me, and Grant was just up the hallway from us. And the name kind of came from we didn't have any better ideas when it came time to launch the website, and DJIapparel.com was available. We thought we'd change it, and a year and a half later, here we are with the same name. So it seems like it stuck well. And what we've built is essentially Expedia, but for the blank apparel industry. So when you're shopping or you're looking for a hotel and you need to book a reservation, typically you don't go to 20 different hotel websites and see, what the prices are, what the availability is. And so we decided that it'd be really cool if we built the same thing for people that are shopping for blanks. So instead of having, 6, 7 different vendor tabs up to see who has, availability, different selection, different catalog, different prices, you can kind of go to one stop to do all your shopping.
Yeah, and I think that's like the number one reason I reached out to you is because you're kind of nonpartisan in your brand preference because of your business. You have no loyalty to like an American Apparel, for example. I really wanted to get your concept of what the tariffs and the potential price updates are going to be doing to the industry and see what kind of insights you have into that.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's no secret that it is very much in flux right now. I know, a couple of the biggest wholesale distributors out there have sent out emails where they said like, hey, here's our plan. This is what we're going to do going forward. And then very quickly, about a week later, once this administration kind of changed their policies a little bit, they sent out another email to say like, hey, this is no longer our definite plan. We're going to, shift and be pivoting around a little bit. So it's very much in flux. I think that from what I've seen, apparel across the board is impacted. Like even on DGI, we have hundreds of brands that are listed on there, and only a few of them are American made. So everyone is subject to at least that 10% tariff, and then a lot more are subject to that high tariff that China's seeing, and then we're also seeing we have this 90-day pause, but after that, even East Asia is going to be subject to 20, 30, 40% tariffs as well. So it's definitely in flux right now. I have like some more information from a lot of these wholesale distributors for the blanks as well that I can share.
Yeah,
but
dive into
realistically,
it.
we don't know a ton.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear if you've had personal conversations with some of these distributors. I'd love to hear some of their responses because it's freaking a lot of people out. I mean, I've sent out some quotes for events that I have coming up in the next like 30 to 40 days. And I literally am writing in the notes, this may not be accurate depending on what happens. So I know that everyone's a little concerned with it. So yeah, all go for it.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, I sent out an email to all of the suppliers that are supported on DGI, and it looks like 6 of them got back to me. I just sent it out at the end of last week. So one thing to note is any inventory that is currently in the US is not subject to the tariff. So anything that is currently held in a warehouse, anything that was actually in transit too. So if it was on a boat and it's still making its way in, that's also not subject. It's the shirts that are currently coming off the factory line. Those are going to be subject to a tariff if they want to bring them into the United States. So I think the first one to talk about, and they're in a little bit different boat because they don't distribute a lot of different products to different manufacturers, is AS Color. So Rick, who's the general manager and kind of leads their sales teams there, he said they have actually increased their inventory position ahead of these tariffs going into place once the administration changed, because they knew that a lot of tariffs are going to be going into place. So they have enough inventory, on some units to last them the next 30 months.
Wow.
And so as a result, and so they've been really ramping it up. They just opened that new Charlotte warehouse last year. So they don't plan to make any changes to prices for hopefully at least 6 months. So AS Color, kind of higher end premium blanks, they're trying to lock in their prices for the next 6 months because they didn't have to pay that extra tariff on all that inventory coming in. And as a result, they can kind of see how the industry handles things and navigate from there.
That's risky, but that's smart to be able to see ahead of that.
Yeah, and it was a cash flow decision they had to make because they have to, obviously pay out those manufacturers, even if they have net 30 terms, they're sitting on 30 months of inventory. So they decided that it was worth it to them. They knew the demand was there. They knew these units would move over time, and they wanted to make sure they could bring them in at a more reasonable cost.
Yeah.
Not to mention, like, if other manufacturers didn't make that kind of a decision, there could be an opportunity where what is a like worse blank than an AS color is all of a sudden more expensive. And then their ability to acquire customers would be huge for whatever time gap it takes for that to be caught up to.
Absolutely, yeah, and I personally love the AS Color product and the team. So if this conversation is something that interests you more, if you've kind of been on the fence, I would encourage you to reach out to them to set up a wholesale account and let them know we sent you over. But that was kind of the strategic decision they make, and it seems like it's paying off now. And we'll see, if the tariff policy changes again, it may end up blowing up on them. But right now, it's looking like it made a great choice to do that.
What other people did you hear from?
Yep. So another one, this is a smaller regional wholesaler out of Louisiana called Wholesale Printables. And they've actually been around for a long time, since, they were like 30 plus of these wholesale regional distributors, and have kind of shrank their market share over time. But they recently just got bought out by a new owner who like built ERP systems for small businesses. And we really like working with them, but they're going to be added to the site in a couple months. But what he mentioned is Gildan, Next Level, Hanes, most of these guys have enough domestic inventory to hold prices for the next about 2 months. So at least until June, they won't be charging their distributors a lot more. But then after that, it looks like the biggest thing that's going to take a hit is hats and bags. Those are typically manufactured in China. A much larger share of them are manufactured in China. I think with the blanks, especially cotton t-shirts, we've seen a lot of that move over to like Honduras, Vietnam, Bangladesh. Some polyester apparel is still manufactured in China. So that'll start being subject to that really high 145% tariff. But it looks like his biggest concern is hats and bags over the next few months until that 90-day pause is done.
Do you know if there's any infrastructure for hats and bags that's just waiting to be running in like a place like Honduras, or it would have to literally be constructed from the ground up?
It would probably have to be constructed from the ground off. So there's been a trend over the last decade now called nearshoring, where essentially you're not manufacturing in the US, which would be onshoring, but you're bringing them into Mexico, Central America, maybe Canada if you can get a good deal. So there is actually a decent amount of manufacturing capability, just like, right over the border in Mexico. I remember when I was working at Tesla, that was like a big push from the top down, is like, even though it costs a little bit more per unit, bring the manufacturing of our parts over to Mexico, and it kind of lowers that supply chain risk. So there is some, and also manufacturing for apparel is, from what I found in the factory tours I've done, is fairly ubiquitous. Like it's been around for several decades now. So it's not a highly specialized process like, building semiconductors is, for example. So it is easier to build a new line. But that being said, you're going to see a huge shock in terms of demand for new manufacturers in Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala. So it's, the entire cost of the industry is just going to go up a little bit. That's kind of the fact of the matter, and that's like the point of it, is raise these prices a little bit, and then as a result, it's going to incentivize people over time to bring some of this manufacturing back to the U.S. But in the short term, it's just going to or increase costs.
I wonder, did you talk to any American manufacturer? Like, did you talk to Los Angeles Apparel? Did you talk to Bayside? Because they seem to be the big winners. If there's a potential for a cheap shirt to all of a sudden be the same price as U.S. made, that they should be the big winners, theoretically. At least that's what I think Trump is trying to pitch.
Yeah, so I haven't heard back from any of them yet, but that's exactly how it should work, is if you have like your normal like supply and demand curve, and if the average cost of a shirt around the world is lower than the average cost of a shirt made in the US, the goal of the tariffs is essentially to bring those two a little bit closer together. So I can actually send you guys a video. Maybe you might want to link it in the show notes. It just has like a high level breakdown of how it affects that supply and demand curve. But then you see, the increase in price times the quantity that's been moved over to domestic suppliers, and that's all going to be captured by these U.S. manufacturers, so like the LA Apparel, the Bayside, the Royal Apparel, um, and then they will probably also raise their prices a little bit. Like you have the opportunity to do so. You're going to see higher utility from a consumer, or in our case, a print shop or a promo distributor for a US made blank, because you're saying, hey, the price is a little bit more predictable. I don't have to pay as much. So they may go up, 5 to 7% instead of 10%, but they're going to raise their prices as well. And they should. That's kind of the goal economically as well.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, I feel like blank prices, at least over the last decade, I've seen so many different prices. Like there was a point where you could get a shirt under $1 and it was from a name brand. Did you see any changes over the last year or two that DJI has been operating that were happening to the industry besides this tariff issue, maybe cotton related?
So there hasn't been any like major groundbreaking shifts, and we're usually looking at it the lens of the purchaser, which in our case is like a decorator or a promo distributor. So changes that are in the like 1 to 5% range, they can usually absorb that or pass it on to their customer really easy, and they don't know a difference. However, I've actually seen costs get pushed down in the last 6 months, and I think part of that is the Gildan 3000 that just came out. So that's like a really ultra lightweight T-shirt that Gildan just put out, and so a lot of people are selling that around the $2 mark, especially for like the non-dyed garments, the white ones. And then overall, we've seen a push to heavyweight cotton, and so that's actually driven the average cost of a shirt up. And I don't know enough to say that per unit or per ounce of square yard, if it's gone up or down for the manufacturers, but I know people are paying more for a t-shirt just because they're paying for more premium quality, more heavyweight cottons. And a lot of these shops are just kind of passing it on to their customers, saying, hey, it's a really nice shirt, a really nice blank, you're going to love it, it's heavier weight, but it costs an extra $1.50 per unit or something like that.
Have you guys thought about this? Like, what if the price goes up so high where people just decide they don't want to wear t-shirts anymore? They just wear the shikis and African gear and stuff like that.
I think, yeah, and Africa is not subject to the super high tariff, so they might start bringing it in at a higher rate.
Okay.
I mean, besides switching our entire fashion trend, it definitely could just affect the fact that customers don't want to pay $17 for a printed shirt for their staff. And then they decide, like, let's just buy everyone name tags and not buy them T-shirts. Like that kind of thing can happen too. Or we just see promotional items go down in general as a trend.
That's kind of our hypothesis at the DGI team right now, or DGI headquarters, is we think promo in general is going to take a little bit of a hit. We would consider it to be a fairly elastic good, which means as the price increases, the demand for that item is going to go down. So your end customer may look at, hey, these hoodies I could get for $20 printed, 3 colors. Now they're $28, or if they're coming from China, they're $40. They're going to say, yeah, we're going to pump the brakes on that and we're not going to buy it. And it's not going to be across the board. Like if you're a printer or a promo distributor, it's not that every single one of your customers is going to say no, but a handful are going to say no.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you're going to see, is just a decrease in demand given this price. Like if it was something along the lines of insulin, so some medication for diabetes, or if you have a pet and you have some kind of special treatment and you love your pet, you're going to pay a little bit more, even if the tariffs are in place. But with the blank apparel, with the t-shirts, with the promo items, we think demand is going to go down a little bit as we see this, across the board 10% bump, and in some cases higher.
Yeah, if you think about it, it makes sense because like the whole sale on a t-shirt is that it's not too expensive. I could set aside a small budget for it and I could get my whole team like fully uniform. Now, if I really have to think twice about that, like, okay, the whole team does not need to be uniform. You could come in whatever you want, Like we'll find a different way to uniform the team. Like before, it's people was already doing it. For example, you would see like management would get nice polos or nice button down t-shirts, but the rest of the team would get t-shirts, right? That's
Yep.
because nice polos and button down shirts was it was the cost was a lot higher to uniform the whole staff that way. And if you bring up the t-shirts to be the same price say as a polo, like a low end polo, is like it's gonna be real hard for say a small restaurant. A lot of restaurants go through a lot of shirts, right? Um, Buying t-shirts at $15 for every employee is gonna be kind of tough.
Yeah. And that's so we've spoken to a handful of the shops as well, and they haven't seen any of the impact of this yet. So like the wholesale distributors haven't increased their prices, even up further up the supply chain to the manufacturers, they haven't really started increasing prices.
Hmm.
But their plan, one, I would say, don't panic too much. Like you're okay, you can absorb the costs. And then two, I would say, kind of like Gavin said, is have a lower cost alternative. If you have a customer that you work with regularly and you know what their budget is, and they're going to see some sticker shock if there's a 10%, 20% increase on the blanks, make sure you come to them with a lower cost alternative. Um, just so they're aware, hey, I know it's a little bit higher than usual.
Hmm.
This is my cost. This is another option you can do. I would advise people, um, if you've already put out a quote and the cost of the blanks happens to go up in that time, and this won't happen for another month or so, but if that does happen, you may have to eat the cost on that one. But we are fortunate enough as an industry where our turnaround time is pretty quick. Like usually by the time someone pays an invoice, the t-shirts are out the door within 2 weeks. So there may be a short period where you have to eat that slight increase because of the tariffs. But overall, I would encourage you to, pass it on to your customers, make sure they know what's happening, and then come to them with a lower cost alternative. And if you've already put out a quote, I think it's good business practice to honor that and say like, hey, we're going to eat this small increase in the
Yeah.
cost. But that's my recommendation. I'm not going to tell anyone how to run their business. That's just based off of like the other business owners I've spoken with and how they're handling it.
I'd love for you to break down for people, especially who are on the side of smaller shops, how they can be getting the best possible pricing through the different tiers that are available. Because you hear about these big shops getting prices that are occasionally like 90 cents lower than a smaller shop who also thinks they're buying wholesale. So what is the policy there? What is the different standards? How do they optimize for that?
Yeah, so there's a ton of levers that suppliers can pull in order to increase customer loyalty. Customers being like the print shops and the promo distributors. One of those is the pricing tier they put you on. There's other things as well, so they can like lower your free shipping minimum. They can give you rebates. They can give you certain promotional options. They can give you advertising dollars. So if you like spend it on advertising for your business, you get a rebate. So there's tons of levers they can pull. And then one of those, kind of like Cole just mentioned, is the pricing tier. So typically the sales reps, they have a little bit of give, but there is a formula that has been set by the VP of pricing and inventory at that business to say like, hey, if you're spending this much last year, here's the pricing tier you're going to end up on. If you're this close to our shop, we can go down this much on your free shipping minimum. The best way to guarantee that you're finding a good option would shamelessly plug DGI here is make sure you're looking at all the options while you're shopping. Make sure you're seeing all the pricing options. If someone's short on inventory, then you can kind of see it there as well. If across the board one of your suppliers is costing 10-15% more than your other suppliers, know that is just specific to your account. So it's not like, hey, vendor A is always more expensive for everyone. I don't even know how they stay in business. They have other loyal customers that they put on lower pricing tiers. And if you want to get to that pricing tier, you can work with them and say like, hey, we spent $500,000 in blanks last year. I would love to move over 200K of this, especially because some of these bigger guys are merging and I want to diversify my spend a little bit. But as a result, can you push me up to the next pricing tier? So that's a conversation you can have, but recognize that you need to bring the volume as well if you're going to kind of expect that. The same way that your own customers as a print shop, if someone wants 6 t-shirts with 20 colors, you're probably not going to give them a crazy deal. But if they're spending 40 grand or 40 grand a year with you, you might be more willing to go down 50 cents a unit or something. So when you're going into those conversations, just recognize they do have flexibility to move pricing, but you need to also be, spending accordingly if you're going to ask for that.
When
I'm just curious because you have all these members, you got these suppliers um, on the other side. Are you able to negotiate pricing on behalf of these customers? Because you are feeding all these suppliers business pretty much.
Yeah, so that would be kind of the buying group approach, which is not what DGI is, where you kind of aggregate a lot of spend, and you can say like, hey, we have this many people spending on DGI. Can we get them on a certain pricing tier?
Mm-hmm.
The way DGI works is essentially we just reorganize information that's already available to you. So
Mm-hmm.
you have information that's on 6, 7, in some cases 13 different websites, and we put it all into one spot where it's easy to consume and synthesize as a purchaser.
Yeah.
So we are aware of all the different pricing tiers. That being said, we cannot share your pricing tier with anyone else. And we can't share anyone else's with you. Our goal is not to negotiate a better deal with you. Our goal is to just make sure you find the right supplier that you have access to as quickly and easily as possible to make that purchase. And how we kind of make our money is, one, there's some advertisements on there. And then two, any new suppliers that we're adding, we set up just like a flat monthly fee to support the integration, and suppliers pay for that. And so we are essentially part of their marketing budget now, where we get them into more shops, into more decorators.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever someone's purchasing, they make sure that they're going to see, this regional distributor's price or large distributor's price. And then we're also working on like some new paid tiers as well. But yeah, so we will not negotiate a new pricing tier or give you any data on that. But if you see differences in the vendors on DGI, then you can approach them and say like, hey, you're across the board 20% higher. Like, I just can't purchase from you at this rate.
I'd love to know, like, how did you build this with all the various API connections so that you could receive enough information out of each person's portal for it to actually be useful and it not just be like a broad-based, data scrape?
Yeah, it's a ton of work for one. So Daniel and Grant were both software engineers in college, so they had a pretty strong background, and they worked in industry for a couple of years before we started this. And so there's a lot of work that goes into building like a distributed system like this, where you're making requests by, on behalf of users to multiple different websites, multiple different servers all at once, and bringing it back in and parsing through all that data. In terms of how we get it to work, it's a mix. So I think anyone that's been in this industry long enough knows that there's no standard API. I know there's like promo standards, but even then it doesn't cover everything. So we just do a ton of work behind the scenes to bring the shopping experience up to a certain level. So typically what we're doing is we go into, these decorators or these shops, and we say like, hey, which website is your favorite to shop on and why? And then we take their favorite aspects of that, and then we figure out how to bring all the suppliers up to that level, whether it's filling in the gaps for shipping time estimates, providing a more robust inventory table to show all the options, combining the catalogs, building better like searching or faceting when you're searching. So that all kind of goes into it, is just a ton of manual work. And I think that's what differentiates us and why we've had so much traction in the last year and a half, is we just do a lot of work and we have a high standard for what the shopping experience needs to be like.
And you mentioned that you have some new features coming out. With all that power, are you going to have some sort of automated purchasing in the future?
Exactly. So that's the direction we're headed in. So we are building Autopilot, which is a new feature coming out on DGI. It's $9.99 a month for the manual entry version, and then we also have a plugin with Printavo invoices. So that'll be $79 a month. But essentially how it works is you get all your line items for an invoice. So let's say we need some, 5,000 t-shirts from Gildan, some 18,500, some Bella Canvas 3001s, and some Richardson hats. And you would essentially hit add to my carts, and we're going to pull in all the custom pricing, all the inventory levels, and we're going to find the most optimized possible cart arrangement for those items. So essentially, I think Cole was mentioning before we jumped on the call, they had someone at the shop he worked at that spent like 4 hours a day doing the purchasing. And it's a lot of data entry, but it's not purely data entry. These are, experienced purchasers who have preferences. They have reasons that they're buying certain items from certain suppliers and certain warehouses. So essentially, we need to take into account all those preferences you might have of, preferred vendor, preferred warehouse, free shipping minimum, and get as close as we can to what your optimized cart configuration can be. So that's the goal is, here's what I need, hit a button. Here's what you would do if you spent 4 hours purchasing, hit checkout. And that's kind of what Autopilot's going to do.
That's going to be incredible. You should charge more.
Damn, Cole. Damn, Cole.
I've been told, but we're pretty happy with that. I think because we have contracts with a lot of suppliers, we can keep it cheap for the shops as well, and make sure everyone's winning there.
Yeah, that's going to be such a fantastic tool. I'd love to know more about you and your team. Like, how did you guys get into this industry? I saw that you were part of Y Combinator. Like, how do you go from that whole software world to all of a sudden directing it towards our niche?
It's a lot of luck for one, and a lot of hard work for another. So my background, I'm from North Carolina. I played, basketball all the way up through, and played basketball at MIT.
Hold up. You think you saying that with a little bit of too much of a swag there? You play basketball. What does that mean? Is that a challenge at the next show?
I think so. I think if there's a hoop at the next Long Beach show, Gavin and I play some one-on-one in the back for sure.
Go ahead, man.
But yeah, so one of my side jobs or summer jobs while I was in high school is I was a screen printer at a local print shop, and it was actually my 8th grade teacher who, once I went to high school, just left teaching and decided to buy a small business. And it was just a small shop, so we had a manual printer when I was there. So you do 200 or 300 shirts, and your forearms are aching. And I worked there again the summer after my freshman year as well. And then I was like, it's great to have this. I love printing t-shirts. I love this, but I'll probably end up going on to something else. And then went to MIT, played basketball there, met Daniel and Grant. And I tried working on a couple other businesses, worked at Tesla for a little bit. And then we kind of came together because we were sick of our jobs and wanted to work on something. And so one of the people that I always call when I want advice was my old boss. He's just a very entrepreneurial guy, very down to earth and practical. And he's like, dude, I would love something if you could speed up purchasing. So we made something really, really rough for him. And it was essentially just 2 different suppliers, which for him was Sanmar and Carolina Made at the time. Pulls in the pricing for both of them, and then you click it and it would just take you back to their website. And he liked it, so we added a couple more vendors, launched it to another 10, 20 shops, and then added the cart functionality. And it's kind of been off to the races since then.
So that's awesome. I mean, at that point, did you decide if we're going to be dedicated to this, we need to go find an investor? Or what was the next step to pay rent?
Yeah, it's the kind of the big question. So we kept our jobs for a little while, so we had that going on, and then about the time we were deciding to go full time on this, one of the other people that I frequently reach out to is another guy that played basketball at MIT about 20 years ahead of me, and he started a business and was able to sell it to Alarm.com, so it's like a smart thermostat company. And he said, hey, you got 2 options on the business model. You can start charging right away for it. Your growth is going to be slower, but you might be able to bootstrap it and pay your rent right away. Or you got to go find investment if you want to do this free option and kind of, grow really quickly and make it available to the entire industry. And we kind of decided hey, we're young. We don't have families to support yet. We're fortunate to be in that situation. We're very cheap to pay our rent and buy pizza at night, and that's kind of all we need. So we said, let's go out and get some funding and then kind of go for broke and see if we can scale up really quickly and build something that a lot of people in the industry use. And so that decision kind of led us to apply for Y Combinator, which is a startup accelerator that a lot of big companies, that was the first check-in. You move to California for 3 months, and they essentially, it's like boot camp for building a company right from scratch. So they help you understand your customer better, help you build as fast as possible, help you set up, your C Corp entity, help you if you want to get more funding afterwards, help you get more investors. And then, just kind of teach you how to work as a big company that's trying to scale. So Airbnb started there, Stripe started there, Instacart, DoorDash, tons of other big companies all started there. So we aren't in the same conversation as any of those guys, but we were around the mentors who helped those guys get started. So it was really an awesome learning experience for us.
Yeah. Well,
I would love.
while I think, yeah, you may not get to a strike. Well, likely won't get to like a strike. But I love just like building something that is extremely niche for a niche industry because that gives you protection in itself. You know, like
Oh yeah. I mean, I think there's been 3, 4 now Y Combinator batches that have come after this, and every batch there's like 10 different companies that are doing AI for analyzing all your work documents and spitting out like an answer about where you find a certain Slack message or something. There's 10 different companies doing legal tech where they look at like a court case and spit out like a response or something like that.
mhm.
And we are the only ones building in the custom apparel industry out of anyone. So that's been really cool. Is we're able to just kind of really focus in, go really deep with your users. We don't have to worry about competition. Our only competition is it good enough for you as a customer or a user of the website, which has been pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw it and you guys announced it, I was like, it is mind blowing that no one did this yet. It was like such an obvious solution, but then nobody had actually implemented it, and then you guys come out with something that just worked. So it's a really fantastic way to like move the whole industry forward and save people time. I wonder, like, what is it like in that room if you're asking for X amount of dollars? What are the expectations of an investor? What does that investor really want out of you? Are they like trying to get themselves far richer, or do they understand it's a long-term play? I mean, what are you even trying to pitch to them at that point?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, we obviously don't know the whole picture of where the company is gonna go in the next decade or so, and we'd love to keep working on it for that long and longer. And we're fortunate enough where we took the money from Y Combinator, which is really, really early stage money. So it's like pre-seed capital essentially. And at that point, they just liked the founding team. So they looked at me, Daniel, and Grant. They said, hey, they have 2 guys that can build really quickly, 1 guy that knows the industry pretty well, and a lot of time on their hands. So they can probably figure something out. And then we mostly took angel investors outside of that. So these guys don't necessarily need to see a 2000x return on their investment. If they can 10x it, they're really, really happy, and they just want to be part of building a cool company. So there's a little bit less pressure there on us to become the next Airbnb or Amazon or something. But that being said, you need to show that you can bring in some return on that investment for sure and hit that 10x number, that 20x number that they're looking for. So we typically, what we would do going into those conversations is say like, hey, we think we've found a repeatable and scalable business model. So here's what we built so far. Here's our traction to date. And then usually we were looking at other similar players in different industries. So we'd say like, hey, here's Expedia. They do something similar. Here's how they monetize. Hey, here's, kayak.com. Here's how they monetize. I think there's another one in like the dental industry as well, where if you're a dentist and you need to order your supplies to run your business. And we actually got connected to them through like another one of the YC partners as well. So when you're at this really, really early stage, you need to show some traction. You need to show that you have a team that has a lot of time on their hands and the ability to actually like build quickly. But you don't necessarily have to show a ton of capital flowing in. You need to say like, hey, we're close to a very repeatable and scalable business model that could potentially make, $40-50 million a year, 10 years down the line. And that's kind of how you go into those conversations. It's mostly, hey, do I think this company could ever be worth $1 billion? Is there a 1% chance that they get there? Okay, maybe it's worth putting in a check at, a $5 million valuation because that's a good return on investment. So it's kind of conversations like that. But realistically, we tried to scale it away from as much of those institutional investors that want that $1 billion outcome, and mostly like angel investors, guys from the MIT community who have had successful business careers who, hey, if they double, triple their money, they're happy, and they've helped us kind of start a business along the way.
I'd love to know, and obviously you don't have to name any names, but I've had sales reps that felt kind of possessive of my shop over the years, where it's like, I'm your rep, I'm your buddy, I'm your friend. And that's kind of how they build their customer list. Have you, with you becoming kind of this faceless solution that just saves people money, Have you received any pushback from the industry where people on that selling side are like, hey, why are you telling these guys they can get a better deal at Alpha today because of a new closeout price? Have you received anything like that?
Yeah, we've gotten some. So everyone that we've added after the fourth supplier on the website, so this was almost over a year ago at this point, or almost a year ago, has paid to be on here. We have a contract set up with them. We help them get some more data on what the spending looks like. We help them push their name out there and get new accounts. And then there's one out of that first four that still doesn't necessarily love what we're doing. But this is publicly available APIs. And it's no different than the information that you would see if you paid someone, in the US or in Philippines where it's cheaper to just sit on a laptop and click around for 4 hours and build a CSV spreadsheet for you. So it seems interesting to me that they are pushing so aggressively against what's good for these small businesses who are their customers at the end of the day. And if they really believe they have a better product, then it shouldn't matter if they can see the other options out there as well. They should be willing to pay whatever the price is.
That's because technology could make certain perfection extinct. So I get where they're coming from, like logically, and just the fear that they feel. Because in theory, you could take away a job from them.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even worry about a job so much. I think, these are all hard goods at the end of the day. They have to come off a manufacturing line. Our goal essentially is not to change anything about how the suppliers operate. Like, we believe very strongly that the customers are making the same purchasing decision they would normally make. They're just making it 5 times as fast. And that's kind of our goal is, if you're a small business owner and you're spending an hour or two of your day doing the purchasing, or you're paying typically one of your more talented employees to do the purchasing, we want to decrease that time so you can, put your time into growing your sales, making sure manufacturing or production is up to speed. Or if you have that talented employee that you're trusting to do the purchasing, you can push them into something else, whether it be sales, shop management, anything along those lines. So we just want to make you more efficient as a printer or promo distributor.
So now, do you have most of the suppliers on the platform now, or are there still a lot of suppliers that's out there that need to get on your platform? And if so,
No.
how do they get on the platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have most of the wholesale distributors for blanks in the industry. So we're adding wholesale printables very shortly. And then I think there's a short list of 3 more that we want to add. So like one in Michigan, Arizona, San Diego. And we're in talks with all those guys, and hopefully in the next year we can knock them out here. But there are tons of smaller independent suppliers. So we actually added a new page on the website called DGI Direct. And this is just for these small independent suppliers. So like an Atonal Headwear, Vertex Apparel. And maybe you don't want to set up an account with them. But if you have a DJI account, you can just buy directly from these guys, and they'll do the drop shipping. And in that case, they don't want to set up like a big, several $1,000s a month contract with us because it's a little expensive. So in that case, we just take like a small cut of each sale. Think like 3%.
Do you have anything one of the big things that we would see when we were doing purchasing was having to swap out similar items, because sometimes like you're buying from LAT and they simply do not have 3XL black. So you just need a 3XL ring spun black side seam. Your customer honestly doesn't care. Are you going to have any sort of like suggested similar item where people could check a button and kick it over for that one size?
Yep. Yeah. So on the main website right now, when you're like looking at an item, there's a button on the bottom that says similar. So you can click on that and it'll show you all the similar items as well as like their starting prices. So if something's cheaper than what you were looking at. And then on autopilot, just like you mentioned. So if something's out of stock, or it doesn't match to our catalog correctly, we'll just throw a little flag and say, hey, this is out of stock, and you can quickly sub it in for something else and just, override it and then run the autopilot again, essentially.
Yeah, it's just so convenient. Before we wrap things up, I'd love to know, since you know so many people in the industry now, what is that difference you see between the small shop that might be a small shop for 15 years and that shop that's either growing or they've gotten to a size that they love? What do you think it takes to make that leap from maybe, I don't know, let's say $500,000 to like somebody who's doing 4 million plus?
Yeah, that's actually a great question because we work with all the way down from someone who's just like kind of a garage printer and they make 20-30 grand a year. It's like a side hustle for them, and then people
Hmm.
who make, I think the biggest is doing 20 mil a year in revenue, 25 now.
Hmm.
Um, and the biggest gap I've seen is the one. I think they like building processes and systems in their business. And exactly which process and system it is kind of depends, whether it's production, automating sales, automating purchasing, automating like shipping and fulfillment. But they just like building processes. So all the big shops I've visited, I'm walking around with the owner and they said like, "Hey, we used to do this. We had a whiteboard over here and it was manual and slow. And then we got this software and now it streamlines everything. Or when we were printing, we used to do this and now we switched over to setting up this way, or we have automated screen reclamation or something like that." And so they like building processes. And then the other thing that I see as a big differentiator is, you need the top line sales. At the end of the day, you could get a lot of volume coming in, but if you're not, finding a way to grow your sales, then it's kind of limiting. So I think the smaller shops that I've seen typically are working. They have a relationship with every single one of their customers. Like the owner has that relationship, and the ones who have grown and kind of surpassed that milestone, the owner realizes, hey, I can't have a great relationship with 5,000 different customers. So they've been able to, one, figure out cold outreach, whether it's cold email, social media marketing, um, sales reps who are doing the calling, some kind of referral program. So they found a way to get customers outside their immediate network and build a process and system around that growth channel. So like I know Kevin from Sales Inc. He kind of works with shops and does stuff like that where he's helping them build their sales. So those are the two biggest things that I've seen though, is you like building processes and systems, and you found a way to grow your customer base outside of just the people that you know, and figured out how to do that repeatably as well. And those are kind of the two big factors that I've seen differentiate the big shops from the little ones. Obviously, there's small stuff all over the place, but that's kind of my conclusion in terms of the great versus the okay businesses that we've seen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It was great talking to you. And I think the company is just going to be going straight up from here because it's such a useful tool. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'd love to see what you do in the next few years. Anything else you want to share to everyone? Any ways to reach out to you?
Yeah, if you're looking to reach out, it's just dgiapparel.com is our website, and you can set up a free account. You can connect your vendors for free. And then also my cell phone number is still the phone number on the website. So if you really need something, you can give me a call, but it's usually quicker if you just use the chat button on the website. And then other closing remarks that I got from the suppliers on the website regarding the tariffs. The main thing is do not panic. It's going to take a while for this stuff to trickle down the supply chain to you, and you're in a actually pretty strong situation where you have a lot of options. Your suppliers are going to work with you; they understand. So don't panic, but understand that you will need to plan and adapt a little bit in the coming months.
Yeah. Are you doing
Awesome.
are you doing any of the shows coming up, and which shows are could people see you at trade shows?
Yes, so we did kind of the big circuit in January where we did PPAI, the Long Beach Impressions Show. We just did Atlantic City, and then the DTF Expo in Arizona, and then coming up we're doing the DAX Nashville show, and then our next one from that will be Printing United and Impressions Fort Worth in October, and those are in or Dallas, sorry, Dallas and Orlando, Florida.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, we look forward to seeing all the stuff you guys create.
Awesome, thanks guys.
Yeah, good talking to you. Bye.